Okay, and then just a reminder, today I got to leave, now that we're back in person at Lumdeha, I got to leave at 9:05 to get there in time.
What's your schedule like before 8:30?
Before 8:30? I can be here before 8:30.
That sounds good.
Are you asking just so that we can like have the same amount of time?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we could talk about that for future Wednesdays.
Okay.
So let's start by reviewing what we did yesterday, and then I will. I mentioned that I learned this with another student I was tutoring yesterday, and we came up with a completely new idea, and the letdown is the Mefarshim really don't say much. Okay, and I suspect the reason why is because there are earlier psukim that talk about arrogance that sound almost exactly the same. And in fact, the pride goeth before the fall. Let me just I meant to prepare this ahead of time. Say pride goeth before fall. So I thought that our pasuk was the cause of that, or sorry, not the cause of that. The origin of that. Yeah, the source of that. Thank you. There is another one that says, hold on. Sorry, hold on. Where is it? Oh, yeah. Lifnei shever gaon, lifnei kishlon gova ruach. So lifnei shever gaon, before breaking is haughtiness. So that's the pasuk. That's in chapter 16. So I didn't look at this, but I have a feeling that like a lot of the Mefarshim say their main idea there. And so maybe we can look at that as well, but not. I don't think we're gonna have time today because there's enough to do here. So my point though is that I looked at all the Mefarshim here, and I've got like a like different tiers of Mefarshim in terms of who I look at first and second, and then I've got my like bottom tier Mefarshim that I only go to when I don't have anything, not because they're bad or anything like that, but because there could be circumstantial reasons. So one of the Mefarshim I found, I had to get to the bottom of the Mefarshim to find anyone who said anything remotely close to what we said yesterday. Okay, so let's review what we said yesterday, and then we'll see what we get. So lifnei shever yigba lev ish, before breaking a person's heart will be haughty, and lifnei kavod anava, and before honor is humility. And I can't remember if I mentioned this yesterday, but kavod could be honor. It could also be greatness, and it could also be glory. So you got to be like a little flexible in terms of what your definition is. So the first translation we had the first approach we had was based on Isaac's translation. No one says this translation. Now that doesn't mean it's wrong necessarily, but it sometimes it's a sign if no one translates it that way, then like maybe you're missing some grammatical point. I don't know. So, but it was a good idea, right? So let's review it. So lifnei shever gaon yigba lev ish. In the presence of breaking, a person's heart becomes haughty. Lifnei kavod anava, and in the presence of greatness, humility. So Isaac is not here to summarize his own idea. Anyone remember what he said?
Basically said that when you see destruction, you'll get haughty because you'll say, well, that's not going to happen to me because I don't make those types of mistakes. And before someone else's honor, you're going to become humble because you're going to realize that guy is higher than me in whatever status symbols. And
okay, good. So that was the first stage of the idea. Then we asked what's the practical implication of this. That one I don't remember so clearly. What do we say for that? I remember for the first half. I just don't remember for the second half.
Well, I guess the second half you can use the fact that you just naturally are going to be humbled, and then you can sort of like use that to like extrapolate the other.
Right, to aspire to whatever gave this guy.
Yeah, and right.
Is that what you're saying, or you're saying something different?
I guess to like, or also just to keep yourself humble in general. But maybe more to aspire to. Like,
let's just do this. I just want to. I think the first half was stronger yesterday, so I want to just define that, and then maybe that'll give us direction for the second half. So I believe what he said for the first half was that it really is a false, or what we said, I guess, that it was a false. It's a false feeling that if this guy stumbles, then you're better than him, because first of all, it could just be that you're looking at a particular aspect of him. So what intellectual basis do you have to conclude that you are superior as a person because this guy, fell in this one area? That might not be true at all. And secondly, like, it's most likely going to be false that like you would not make this mistake. If you define the mistake categorically, you'll realize you've made lots of mistakes like that. And maybe not in this particular case, but you are subject to mistakes like that. So like, why are you feeling haughty about it? You know? And also, what does this guy failing have to do with, like, it's almost like a miman of shach. Like, were you great before you saw this or after? You know, like there's a feeling of like a rush of like, oh, I'm better, you know? Like, now, if you're in a race and you're neck and neck and the guy falls, then that actually makes you better, you know? But if you're just like in reality, then, you know, like, let's say, for example, let's say like I'm a musician and I see this another musician make a mistake. So I suddenly feel better about myself. Well, my assessment of my own abilities, like my own abilities didn't change and my assessment shouldn't have changed based on seeing this guy. Like, if I really had an accurate view of my own abilities, I could see a bunch of people succeed or fail, and that's not going to change my assessment of my own abilities. So it's just like it's just an unwarranted gova lev that just pops up for several reasons. Okay. So I think that's like the first half. So now, how can we translate that or transfer that to the second half in a way that is as symmetrical as possible?
Right.
And I'm not dismissing what you said before. I just wanted to approach it from the part that we had clear.
That's good. I guess it's not like you're still in the realm of the relative when you see the guy do the good.
Yeah.
Like do a great thing. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh my god, like he's great. And
Yeah.
but it can that feeling, I guess, is an uncomfortable feeling. So you can kind of use that to get out of the realm of the relative. Like, that's a good way out.
Okay, good. Let me just process that and then say it to make sure I understand what you're saying here. Right. So the ultimate mistake here is operating in the relative value system. That seems to be the subject of the pasuk. So when you see a guy get greatness, it triggers this feeling of, oh, he's better than me. And that would not be a nava. In fact, I think our good term for this, the shval ruach that we started talking about, is actually good. That the shval ruach is in a relative value system often. Mm-hmm. So you should realize that, like, just feeling that someone's better than you, that's not necessarily a true or productive way of thinking, for the same reasons that thinking you're better than someone else is not. So if you use that as a springboard for then recognizing what actually am I objectively, not relatively, that's a nava. That's gonna lead you to a nava. Yeah. Okay, good.
Cool.
Any questions on that? I think that's clearer than we had it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bobbing of the head, or a shaking of the head, or a nodding?
It was a bobbing.
Yeah.
But that bobbing was like, yeah, okay.
Okay, fine. All right. So it's not a bobbing of the head of like I'm skeptical or like I feel like we didn't.
No.
Okay. If it is, I just want to know because
it's a neutral bobbing.
Neutral bobbing. Okay.
In the affirmative, that I understood.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. See, this is why, like, you know, on Zoom with no camera,
right?
Like, you just miss out on all the little like subtleties of communication. Okay. So then the next reading that we had was the standard one of before breaking, the heart of man will become haughty, and before honor, humility. Okay, and Sadigon said, hold on a second. I'm gonna actually pull up the Sadigon because I saw another interesting thing here. Sadigon said, after a person's heart becomes haughty, there is breaking, and after humility is honor. Right. So I wanted to actually point out, we mentioned that he reversed it. So in yesterday when I showed you the Sadigon, I only had access to the translation, the way Sadigon translated it. But Sadigon also has a commentary. And oftentimes his I find I get more out of his translation than his commentary because it's, again, a minimalist thing. But I was looking at his commentary, and he leads with, hold on. He leads with, Pasuk zeh, af al pi shehifchanuhu b'targum. This pasuk, even though we reversed it in the translation, okay, hari efshar gam levaro kamoshahu, then we could also explain it the way that it is. And then he gives an explanation the way it is. So that kind of like solidified my, or solidified or rationalized, depending on how you look at it, my approach of just taking the Targum as its own entity. And then like Sadigon's commentary is another thing, because he's acknowledging here, he made a move in the Targum, which he does not explain in his commentary. Right. And then he gives an explanation in his commentary, you know? Yeah, so do you remember, so this was the second idea we had. And the question, the operative question there also was, if Sadigon is right, that it means that after a person's heart becomes haughty, there's breaking. Why does the pasuk formulate it as though breaking precedes haughtiness precedes breaking, as if it happens every time? We said that doesn't seem to be true, and I gave the Ibn Kaspi saying it's a style of Mishlei, but if we could explain it here, then that'd be good.
Did we answer that?
Yes. I think Isaac also came up with the main idea of this.
Right.
I forgot what we contributed, but
yeah, I think he said that I guess if you're like being haughty and being like an anav are opposites, in that haughtiness is like having I guess not accurate view of yourself, like you think you're better than you actually are.
Right.
And another is having an accurate view of yourself.
Yeah.
So if you think you're better than you are, then you're just gonna make more mistakes because you're not gonna, I guess train or prepare or whatever. And also right. There were like the 3 kinds of
good.
haughtiness. I forgot all of them, but one of them is that like the whole world like revolves around you, and like everything is supposed to. You feel like everything should happen for you, or like whatever, and similar types of ideas.
Yeah.
So if you are that kind of person, then you're just gonna it's gonna lead to your destruction, because you're not gonna be, acting properly in the world to get good results. But if you're an anav and you have a correct view of yourself, then you're gonna sort of prepare and put in the work.
Okay, good. And then the second way, you're right that there were 3. And the second type of haughtiness was in your assessment of a particular skill or talent or strength. That if you misassess that, then obviously you're going to make a mistake. And then the third one we said, I think we deemed it not relevant to this approach, which is thinking you're better than other people. And I think it actually works out very neatly. That the first approach we took to the pasuk focused on haughtiness in the relative value system. And then this approach is really haughtiness in isolation, So there was one move that Isaac made to answer, why is it that it says it as an absolute, lifnei shever yigval levish, and this was the main idea.
Right, because I guess when you have a shever, you're supposed to assume that it was
exactly. So that was the move here, is that you should assume that every breaking, meaning every failure, stemmed from haughtiness of one of those 2 species, and it's not always true. So then why should you assume that?
Better to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, is because if you habitually ask yourself, like, what false, exaggerated view of myself led to this mistake, even if you don't find anything, like let's say it really was some external factor, chances are if you engage in that process every time you fail, then you'll learn a lot more and you'll improve a lot more, And this is something that like Isaac and I have talked about before. I didn't mention here is the only competitive hobby I do is Magic the Gathering, and I've done that for a very long time. And all the pro players, and I assume this is also true in any competitive like sports, they will ruthlessly assume that they made a mistake. Like when you watch them stream and you see them lose, and that it's like, this is not your fault, they will ask themselves, okay, well, at what point did I lose this game? What mistake did I make? And they'll go through, and sometimes they won't find anything, but many times they will find mistakes that they made just from that line of inquiry. So it's a very good line of inquiry for that reason. And then just to support that, so when I was mentioning looking through the Mefarshim, so one of the Mefarshim I never use, rarely, is the Gra. Now, there are 2 reasons I never use him. One is because someone borrowed my copy of the Gra in like my 3rd year in yeshiva, and we both forgot about it, and he didn't return it until 8 or 9 years later. So I missed out on that when I was like developing my whole approach to Mishlei. The second reason is he's very, I don't want to use the word inconsistent because that sounds like a fault of his. He's quite varied in the style of his interpretation. So sometimes he'll give a very like clean, straight, elaborately like articulate shot that is in the style that I learned Mishlei. Sometimes he'll give like this is a remez for Torshbal Pet, Torshbal Sav, and Talmud. Like, and he won't explain it, and it'll be about like more like Rashi style, you know? So I've just tended to not use his. So yesterday I went through every commentary I could get my hands on, and he's the only one who says something like what we said yesterday. He says, Livnei Gever Shever V'gomer, Mistama Haya Lo Tchila Gavus Halev, V'lachein Ba'alav Shever. So Mistama, generally, it's probable that he had a prior Gavus Halev, and that's why he failed. So that's exactly the idea.
Cool.
Right? Yeah. Now, what we didn't work out, or at least when I revisited it this morning, Lifnei Kavod Anava. So what is that? Like, how would we carry the idea to the second half?
Right.
And this part, I don't remember what we said yesterday, but I just worked it out again this morning. So I don't know if what I'm going to say is different or the same. What do you think? That one was the shaking of the head, right?
Yeah. Right.
So, like, just to set it up, the first half, we're saying that when you experience failure, there should be a default assumption that it was a result of Gavus Halev. So if you just plug that formula into the second half, what would you get?
You get every time something good happens, you should assume that you are an unknown. Right.
So that clearly does not make sense, right? But can we is there another way to interpret that setup?
I think Isaac said that if you want kavod,
you
should be humble.
Right. Okay, good. So that is what Isaac said. If you want kavod, you should be humble. And I think that that's a good message to take away from this, that like in the same way that exaggerated views of the self will probabilistically lead to failure, accurate views of the self will probabilistically lead to success and get that kavod that you want, you know? I thought of another way to approach it though, and I don't know if this is better or worse. See, when you say it like that, it sounds better. That sounded good. This morning, I thought something different. So this morning I was thinking, when you receive kavod, okay, then there is a tendency to just bask in it and to not use it as a tool for self-knowledge. But what you can do is you can, and maybe I'm thinking this because of this morning's and yesterday morning's Marcus Aurelius thing, you could stop it and say, whoa. I have an impression here. Like I'm being given an impression that I am great. Is that impression in line with the reality? You know, like maybe, let's run it through reverse. Maybe you lucked out and that's why you felt like you got a success, you know? And like, you know, or maybe like, maybe like, for example, let's say like, you know, when you have a race in the Olympics and like they go down to the split second and like one guy wins gold. So like that guy, I mean, I don't know what's inside their head, but that guy like likely will think to himself like, oh, I'm the gold medalist. Well, you're going to say that split second really means that you're a better athlete? No. Like that could have easily just been, you know, if you like, if you, you know, if some like interaction between your foot and the pavement like resulted in a split second to, and the other guy, a split second delay, like that's what made you win. Like, I don't think so, you know? Also the nature of fans and admirers in any field is that they do have an exaggerated view of what the greatness is of the performer because they don't see what goes on behind the scenes. And it's just easy for that performer to get caught up in that view of greatness and believe that they are what their fans think that they are. You know, so if you use, in the same way that if you get a failure, you should ask yourself, like, am I being haughty? So too, when you get a kavod, you should ask yourself, like, am I actually having an accurate sense of self? Am I actually being humble? Or is the kavod way out of proportion to the actual sense of, to the actual, truly what I am?
So they should both cause you to reflect on how you got here.
Exactly. And and now when you put together the entire subject here, the subject really is using failures and successes to as tools for self-knowledge to improve, right? That you don't just get lost in the failure or chalk it up to other factors, and you don't get seduced by the kavod or like you know move on and like here's another example, right? Is that it's so easy when you plan something, okay, and it succeeds, you just enjoy the success and move on. And you don't say, okay, let's look back at this with a critical eye and say, what did we do right and what did we do wrong? What was a fluke? What could have been done better? What made this succeed? Is the thing that I thought made this succeed really not it? You know, like let's say I give a shiur and it's like a tremendously successful shiur, and so I chalk it up to my greatness. Let's say, right? Is that really it? Or like, were the people just really in a good mood that day? And then that's why they did it. And if I gave this in another time, then they wouldn't have been in a good mood, you know? Or like, is it that like, you know, they, is it, you know, maybe the people there like were very participatory because they had worked on the area before and like they were drawing on past knowledge. It has nothing to do with me, you know, or whatever. It could be like a bunch of stuff. And I really have to like, if I just got caught up in the kavod, I wouldn't actually examine what I did that made it a success and what was a fluke or what was due to external factors, you know?
If you always do that though, wouldn't you never enjoy a success?
So that's a good question. I think you would enjoy it because what's going to happen is you're going to get, first of all, you're going to enjoy more success because this process will lead you to have more success. Secondly is when you do see that it came from your actual skills, like when you reflect back, you'll really enjoy it because it will be a reality-based enjoyment, not a fantasy-based enjoyment. You know, like I really did make the right decisions and it worked, and it was due to the fact that I made the right decisions. You know, yeah. But you're right. You're gonna have to sit through some uncomfortable, like, not maybe sometimes uncomfortable, but sometimes just like stepping back and like not having the initial rush of like I'm great. You know, yeah. Okay, in the remaining time, let me show you this one last approach because I don't want to focus on this for tomorrow. So when I was learning this with this kid, Avi, so we got into this mode of lifnei shever balev, and we said that the problem was, it sounds like it's saying before every shever was preceded by gavus alev, okay? And then the way we approached it yesterday was to say that that's not true, but you should assume it. But the other way to approach it is to define shever based on that which is preceded by gavus alev. Okay, so in other words, what would be there? Apparently, in other words, it's not just a stam term for failure, but what shever definitively is preceded by gavus alev.
Shiur of the lev.
Yeah, you want to explain what you mean?
Yeah, that in order for your ego to be crushed,
yeah,
you need to have a high ego.
Exactly. Okay, good, right? So in other words, is it's saying the shever of your inflated ego, right? Now we can plug in all the definitions from before of like, if you think you have a greater skill than you do, what's ultimately going to happen? I mean, it might take time. Ultimately, you're going to be confronted by evidence that your assessment is not correct, and that's going to hurt. Okay. That's the shever. Or if you have this view that reality revolves around me and I'm deserving of this, eventually reality will not be in line with that, and you'll be confronted with the evidence that you're not the center of reality, you know, and that's going to hurt. So that's the shever then, okay? And so by clinging to a false sense of your own greatness in one of these areas, so then you're setting yourself up for this exact type of shever. Okay, now does that make sense?
Yeah.
The second half, though, is harder then. So according to this, our question was, lifnei kavod anava, that's not true. There are many people who get kavod, but they don't actually have a nava. So according to this way of approaching it, what are we going to have to say about the kavod here?
That it's only possible after anava.
Right, so that there is apparently a certain type of kavod that only comes to people who are anavim. Now the question is, what is that kavod? That's a little bit harder than understanding what is the shever. So can we agree experientially? I don't know how many humble people you know, okay? But in your experience, does this register in your experience of like people who are humble? There is a certain type of admiration and kavod that people have for them, or would you say that that's not true?
Yeah, like people like that, like. I don't know. Maybe it's because like they don't feel threatened by them or whatever.
Okay, good. So that's yeah. Okay, good. So that actually that actually answers it. My next question was going to be why is that, right? But there's a certain type of kavod that only people who are anavim have, and I was going to say, what's the reason for that? Okay, can you elaborate what you mean when you say they don't feel threatened?
Oh yeah, I guess like they see this person as like not trying to like beat them in something or
Yeah.
like win over them.
Yeah.
And just there, like sort of as just like a helpful, nice person.
Yeah.
So like then people kind of like like that.
Okay, good.
And they don't try to like they don't try to get better than that person because he's not trying to get better.
Okay, good. So I thought of it in I had three possibilities, and that's one of them. So let me just state the three possibilities, and either these are three or we can unify them. So I think here the way it works is like this: is there's an inherent conflict that leads to people not being kavod habrios is a thing, right? Like honoring people is a thing, right? Now, what's the philosophical or metaphysical premise behind kavod habrios that you should honor everyone? What's the premise?
No one is inherently worth more or less.
Yeah, right. We're all inherently selling lakims, right? Like there's no inherent superiority. Okay, so philosophically there should be a kavod for everybody. So now the question, and not only that, but psychological identification should occur with any human being. Okay, but we see that doesn't happen, and the question is why not? So I think one of the biggest obstacles, if not the biggest obstacle, is on the one hand we all are the same and there's no inherent superiority, but on the other hand we are so caught up in this relative value system that any person we interact with, we immediately have to be like, am I better than this person or not? Or like is this person gonna like beat me? Are they gonna win? Am I winning? Are they a loser? We're caught up in the relative value system, which breaks that natural identification and breaks that like recognition of our common humanity. So with a humble person, like you're saying, they're not in the relative value system. So you sense that they're not a threat to your winning. Like even if you are, like it's going to be either way. Either you are caught up in the relative value system and you realize this guy's not a threat and therefore like I don't have to worry about it, or you are trying to get out of the relative value system and you're like, oh, that guy's not in it, and like you're drawn to that, and then secondarily, I think there's a thing where like because we're caught up in the relative value system, let's say you see someone who is excelling in a thing that you yourself want to excel in. So you're going to experience jealousy of some sort, okay, or competition or anger or frustration that they're beating you, right? Consciously or unconsciously. But what happens sometimes is like if you're confronted with someone who is again, let's talk about whether it's in learning, whether it's in music, whether it's in athletics. When you're confronted with someone who's like a pro, who's like leagues beyond you, and you're not in competition with them, they're so far beyond you, you're not in competition, you could just admire their good qualities, right? Like there's no feeling of being threatened by, like, if you're a basketball player and like you see a pro, you're not threatened by that, unless you've got a really weak ego. So I think that happens with a humble person also, is you see a humble person, they're not throwing off these competitive vibes, and that allows you to then appreciate their good qualities for what they are. Like a genuine appreciation that would have been blocked by your competitiveness with them. With another person, I don't want to focus on their good qualities because that means that they're better than me, but if they're not trying to be better than you, you can just appreciate their good qualities for what they are. So that's a second thing. And the third thing is, and this is a move, but like there's a statement in the Meiri's commentary on Mishlei that Rabbi Moskowitz always quotes, but because Rabbi Moskowitz has a bad memory, he can never tell me where it is. I think I've seen it once. I think I've highlighted it in one of my Meiri's somewhere in like my existence, that the Meiri says all good midos come from anava and all bad midos come from gaiva. Okay, so if that's true, and even if it's not true, I think we can agree that people who are anavim tends to have other good midos, right? Like it is a thing, and like that I don't know why that is, but like they tend to be nice, they tend to be generous, they tend to be like patient, they tend to be sympathetic, and I think the opposite is also true of gaiva. So I think that's another reason why you will naturally be drawn to give them kavod, because they do have good midos. So just to summarize these three things here, right? So one is they don't have competitive, a competitive self-assertive aura that is a turnoff. So secondly is that you can naturally identify with them and the third is that they actually have good midos. And so these are causes of kavod. And the approach here again is to the entire pasuk is just the methodological approach is it said an absolute statement and we're taking it as an absolute and using that to define it. So before every breaking is gavus alev. So we said, well, what kind of breaking is definitively preceded by gavus alev is breaking of the ego. And before kavod is anava, what type of kavod is definitively before anava? It's the unique type of kavod that is given to people who are anavim, you know. And then we're now assessing like you know, why is that? And it has to do with the oh, see, now I'm thinking of something else though. So let me read to you. Okay, so let me read to you. So this is what I came up with yesterday with Avi. Let me read to you when I prepared this over the summer, and I think we'll see that the ideas are similar but slightly different. Okay, so this is my 4-sentence summary from the summer. Okay, so I said, so I titled, this is kind of a cumbersome title, The Effects of Haughtiness on the Kavod Economy. Okay, the haughty person believes he is better or more important or more deserving than other people on the basis of particular qualities he has, whether in reality or in his imagination. To the extent that he manifests this haughtiness, people, oh yeah, this is totally different. To the extent that he manifests this haughtiness, people will actively seek to break him because they feel threatened by his competitive self-assertiveness. The humble person who has a realistic view of himself and an accurate estimation of his strengths and weaknesses will not radiate any threatening competitive vibes. Since those around him will not feel threatened by him, they'll be able to appreciate his genuine superior qualities and give him the kavod he deserves. So the second half is the same as what I just said now, but the first half is saying that the breaking is coming from other people, just like the kavod is coming from other people. That's a tighter fit into the symmetry of the pasuk, because kavod, I mean, unless you're going to say kavod is like an objective thing, kavod, like honor, comes from other people, like that when we talk about like respect or honor, you know.
Right. Then it's less definitive if it's coming from other
yeah
people.
right yeah, it's more it's more probabilistic, yeah, not like that, yeah, not like that. Yeah, so I guess that is the difference between this and the one I just said, is that the one I came up with over the summer is not taking that definitive definition approach, but it's more symmetrical in the pasuk. And then the one I came up with yesterday with Avi is making the definitiveness move, but it is the slight disadvantage is that the second half of the pasuk is talking about your interactions with other people, and the first half is talking about the haughty person in isolation.
Could it be the second pasuk is also talking about the ana, like intrinsically he has some kind of like not kavod, but like we said, like some kind of greatness or glory that he feels or something.
Yeah, my only problem with that is like I don't think he's interested in that. Like
right.
Well,
maybe that's like that's his like satisfaction comes from that, is because like you're out of the relative system, so you're not like
I'm such a good person outside of the relative system. Like, you know, like it could be. I'm like let me put it this way. The Gova Lev guy really cares about when his ego is smashed. You know, yeah. I just don't feel like there's an equivalent thing that the Anav person has. I mean, there's that one story in the Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos on Hevi Me'od Me'od Shval Ruach. You know, the story about the bathroom guy. Oh, so there's this guy. So he says, I bring it up on my computer, but I don't have time. He says, this is a story. I don't know if this comes from a Jewish source or not, but he said, he says, one time he says, like, I've been working on humility for a long time, you know, or whatever. And I had to take a voyage on a ship. And I guess back then the poor people would not have like their own room on the ship. They'd be like with all of the cargo, you know? So he said, I was like crammed into this little thing in the cargo, and like on the deck above, this rich guy came, saw me. And because he was such a despicable guy, he exposed himself and urinated on me. And I asked myself, why would such a person do this to another human being? And then I realized that I had reached the highest level of anava, meaning that I did not take it personally. I didn't I wasn't offended. I just wondered about it as almost like a psychologist or an anthropologist, like what an interesting thing for someone to do to another person, you know? So that, I think that would be the biggest candidate for the type of kavod you're talking about, of just an objective recognition that you are not involved in the relative value system. Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that the idea is false. I feel like it's not quite Mishleic, or I don't even, that's not even the thing, is it still feels asymmetrical in its weighting, like in how it's weighted. Like the Gova Lev guy is interested in true greatness, and then he gets broken. And the Anav guy is not interested in like Anava as a goal of any sort. You know, I hear the idea though. Okay, good. So we got, even though we didn't have Mefarshim, I think we got some nice ideas out of this pasuk.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, stop for today.
Cool.
Got to go. Yeah.